And so how do you decide what membrane works best for you? Some of the architects in the room have probably gone through this process numerous times trying to figure out what kind of membrane might they look at for whatever type of project they're working on. I've noticed with some folks that I've met that maybe have 10 or 20 years of experience, they sort of find a product, they like it, they understand its pros and cons, and that's what they usually use, but there's always new stuff on the market and to choose from. So we can't tell you exactly how to decide or what to use. There's just
buying a car.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right. It was. So how do you decide whether, let's say you just have two choices, which is impossible, but let's say you just have two. You have to decide whether to buy a Honda hybrid 4-door or a Prius or a Toyota hybrid 4-door car. How do you choose between those two hybrids? What is it that helps you make the decision? So you don't have to. What? Cost. Storage. Good point.
Yeah.
Maintenance.
Word of mouth.
Recommendation.
Right. Personal or
Right.
Why I can see the battery. Headroom, like a tall person.
Headroof. Yeah, good one.
I'm struggling because I don't know that.
headroof.
And as you mentioned these things, the more of these things that are basically similar, the batteries last just as long, the headroom is sufficient, things like that, it gets down to less and less items. And the reason I brought this up is that my wife and I bought a car 4 years ago, and we went through this process, and I liked the Prius, and she liked the Honda. And we felt they were both pretty comparable. The Honda didn't get quite the gas mileage that the Prius did, but we've called it close enough. So we ended up buying the Honda. And guess why? Because my wife liked the Honda better. Yeah, she wanted it and she liked it better. And her argument was, the Honda looks more like a regular car than the Prius. I said, yes, you're right. It does look more like a regular car. That's why I like the Prius. Remember, I'm the guy that wears my watch on my right wrist, with a few of you, and I'm right-handed. So anyway, I think in roofing, there are a lot of good products out there. And so I don't know that you can actually go wrong, but there are a lot of good products, and it's hard to decide. Sometimes it's going to come down to all these various elements, but the more you can ask questions about the type of structure you have, the construction sequencing. And Dave and I are going to try for the future to put a list of questions together that you might ask as it relates to helping answer the question of what membrane you might look at relative to certain types of projects. And Dave found something on the web that actually does that to a certain extent. And so we're going to try and take that and tailor it a little bit more to some of these questions. But we don't have it right now, so you're sort of on your own out there.
One thing you mentioned, though, that's clear between them is the built-up does require roof barriers.
Yes.
And the others don't. So that seems like one fairly clear criteria.
It is until you start talking to the salespeople. So we'll let you talk to them because we've done it. Yeah.
Do either or both of these choices, do any of them have components or toxins that leak into up to the plants?
Their environmental characteristics?
Exactly, because I'm looking at these things and thinking they're god-awful. There's stuff that I wouldn't want to have around me or any plants that I have. So what happens? Is there any issue with that? Because they're potentially poisonous.
And we don't have the answer. Before we started looking at Ecoroofs, who was looking at roofing and asking that question in our city? It's not, it's kind of our, we've looked at roofing and pollutants coming off roofing and stuff like that, but as it relates to the materials breaking down being the source of the pollutants, quite frankly, there hasn't been a lot of work in the United States on that issue as it relates to what might get into the water. Now, we don't have the answer.
These are standard things used anyway, whether the guy has a roof or not.
Well, you're right. These are standard things that are used.
Going into the drains
But
Storm.
it doesn't
there's an issue
mean
with
that,
Because they are causing environmental problems, these standard things that are being used, that's the whole point.
Right.
I'm aghast that it's trying
okay,
to.
wait, I don't,
Okay.
we could get into this and be sort of off on a tangent. I mean, it's an important question, but we don't have the answer, and so I'm not suggesting that what you're saying isn't accurate or what anybody else says. It's just we don't want to use this as the place for that conversation because we don't have any answers to give you anyway. So I hope I don't want to try and cut off discussion, but it's an important question. We ask that question. We try to figure out, okay, how can we get at that issue? And that's as far as we've gone. We don't have the answer.
Every product has its ramifications in production, in wherever you go. It's how you decide.
It's right. We have that, and so that's something that is an important issue. And we could have a whole series of discussions, a forum about that issue related to everything that we use, as you're saying, besides the roofing. And it's important, though.
Do they all have similar lifespans then?
Again, they will tell you that they have the lifespan that's relative to their qualifications of that information. But generally, it appears they all have, if they're covered with an Ecoroof, that they all should be pretty similar because they're protected.
Will extend the lifespan of what we can say. Yeah. I did just quickly want to show you guys, we have there's a box of goodies up here, and there's some other drain mat and some other things, but just wanted to show you, here's EPDM membrane, if anybody wants to come up and do a scratch and sniff on that. This is the cap sheet to modified bitumen system, so this is your thicker, kind of 120 mil multi-layered system, and then this is a piece of TPO that you can see here with two distinctly different layers, white side and black side here. So, and then we have root barrier that was up on just that, straight from the example that you saw in that photo. This is what's up in the Portland building, so just blue root barrier. And then here's I don't know how well this root barrier is going to do anymore, but it's a little, I think there's a few holes in this one. But anyway, just another example of it as well. Some filter fabric and some other things. So please come up and take a peek at this if you want to.
Is the root barrier just laid over? It's not adhered, is it?
Not typically, no. It's just overlapped. Understanding that the roots, hopefully the roots aren't going to grow.
It's usually about a 5-foot overlap is recommended.
Because it's pretty cheap, I mean, in general, cost per square foot, so you can do a nice overlap there.
Yeah, right.
For design build on Ecoroof, and you have a whole team package of material folks who already have demonstrated the success. And then would that also affect like insurance, warranty?
I think we are hoping that different ways of getting business done, getting the work done, evolve and come into our community. So a design build type approach that sounds good. And if there are, we're hoping that the 43 acres helps generate enough kind of business, and hopefully then it carries on beyond that, so that different companies will start putting together different packages for property owners, architects designing buildings. There's already a lot of that out there, and we'll talk more about some of those details. For instance, the trays that we're not talking about yet, but we will talk about. So we're hoping that happens, yeah. And one thing that we did, and we're talking about doing it on City Hall, but something we did back on the Hamilton building in 1999. So in 1999, the only person that had, to our knowledge, that had experience building an Ecoroof was me in 1996, putting an Ecoroof on my garage. Well, that's not exactly a qualification to do a large commercial project. So we did have two bidders, but what we did is we bid. We didn't write specifications with all the specificity with the membrane and this, that, and the other. We sent out a performance spec. We said, we want an Ecoroof on this building, and here are the things that we are interested in seeing done or achieving with this Ecoroof. Give us your proposal as to what your Ecoroof design would be, and then we will select from what you propose. We didn't say the membrane you had to use. We didn't say how, the plants or anything else. We just said we want an Ecoroof. So that actually worked out pretty well. We had two bids, one from a company in Ohio and one from a company in Philadelphia. The company in Ohio got the job. and pieced it together, actually, which we didn't know, but they were sort of piecing it together. And then we got the roof. So they had a modified bitumen. The other bidder, who didn't get the job because he was a little bit higher and he was farther away, was going to use a TPO. So I thought it was a really good system. And since then, the city and most of the people that I know of that have done Ecoroofs have always gone with the specification. They try to spec everything exactly. And I think that maybe we're at the early stages of this industry. Maybe that's not the best way to do it. Maybe a performance bid, whether it's to design it and or build it, is an approach that we want to kind of open that door again and say maybe there's something there that's more beneficial.